Welcome everyone to our Supporting Your Student Through Academic Planning and Course Registration Fall 2023 Family Programs webinar. This is information that is being presented to parents to support you in supporting your student as they go through the registration process and their academic planning for the upcoming spring 2024 semester. I am very happy to introduce our panelist tonight, who is my wonderful colleague, Heather Cooper, who is the Associate Director for Student Engagement with Academic Advising in Newcomb-Tulane College here at Tulane. So I'm going to turn things over to Heather and then join you again when it's time for the Q&A.
Good evening, everyone. You can advance to the next slide. Thank you. Some of you may have remembered seeing me back in June if you're a first-year parent. And in June, Penny and I were really focused on making sure you all knew what to expect from your students' fall registration. This season is spring registration, and actually summer registration is available as well during the same time period, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So today's presentation, you can kind of expect to hear some things that you heard before, but more of the granular detail of what your student is experiencing and how they'll be navigating that on their own a little more independently this fall. So hopefully after tonight, you will know a little more about our advising model here at Tulane, what advisors' roles are in registration, what's your student's role in registration, when students register, what technology students will be using during registration, so kind of what is the schedule of classes, how to navigate that, and really how you can support your students not only before registration, but during and after registration. And then, of course, I want to share some resources that are very timely for what's happening in the next few weeks around drop-in advising opportunities and how to make appointments, but also resources that might help your student. We recognize that this is a tricky time of the semester. There's a lot of stressors, and we've kind of gotten through the midway point. So some students are kind of floating through, and some students are a little more heightened and anxious at this time. So I like to share a few other resources at the end as we have time. We can advance. All right, so at Tulane and Newcomb-Tulane College, we have kind of a multi-team approach to advising support. I'm representing Newcomb-Tulane College Advising. College Advising is focused on meeting your student when they come in and getting them through graduation. We are also focused on making sure students know all of the core curriculum requirements and have completed those core requirements fully before they graduate. So we're kind of the big picture advisors. Now, the first two things on this list both fall under my unit. First year advising is a team that was newly created this year to support only first year students. So normally we would have spread first year students out with our other cohorts of students. So advisors might have any one set of students, anybody from different years. And this year we have a concentrated group of 6 advisors who are focused on the first year student with smaller caseloads so that they can spend a little bit more time offering programming and offering alternatives to the one-on-one meeting, but also seeing those students and tracking those students more explicitly. The core advising team is a team that your student will move to next year as they move into sophomore year. This team is really focused on that pathway to graduation, getting those majors declared, supporting through study abroad, and obviously getting them to senior year and commencement. Then we have the major advisor. The major advisor is not in our unit. The major advisor is assigned at the time of major declaration A few of your students may know exactly what they want to do and have already declared, and that's wonderful. They may already have assigned in that process a major advisor that they can lean on. Other students the declaration process begins really more in sophomore year, and that's when they can expect to have a major advisor assigned to them to help support them in the curriculum that they've chosen. Our office does have pre-professional advising, which helps students with application processes related to pre-med, pre-law, and other pre-health professions as well. This is a very small but mighty group of advisors that work really around the clock and around the entire year to help students, even first-year students, help them understand what their requirements are and how to ensure the best application possible in any of their opportunities for post-grad. We have fellowship advising to help students, and this is not this is a little bit more Newcomb-Tulane College, but partners with us are fellowship advisors who will actually help students prepare applications for nationally competitive scholarships such as Fulbright and Rhodes. We have in our office, but not within our unit, career advising and educating. We have classes for career exploration. We have classes for internship and career preparation. And we have one-on-one coaching available with our career staff. So this is really a good opportunity for first years who are very exploratory to start thinking about how to not only build their transcript, but build their pathway to that job and build up their resume in addition to their transcript. We have success coaching, which I'll talk a little bit at the end about, but that is another area of support, usually a little bit more around task management, kind of juggling, kind of the executive functioning piece of the advising needs that students might have. Success coaching is really prepared to kind of meet students where they're at and hold and see where they need to go to feel the support that they need to get through each semester. And we also have new this year for us, peer advisors. And we have many peer advisors in our office now. We have about 10. One is one of my students. She's very sweet and very excited about being a peer advisor. I don't think I've ever met a peer advising group that is quite so excited about being the new cohort. So if your student hasn't met one of these advisors, I would send them in. I'll talk to you about the hours later. And then on campus, there's also tutoring support, both peer and professional support. So those are all the different teams that kind of help support your student. I better hurry. Okay, next one. The advisor role in registration is really to make sure the student understands and learns the core curriculum requirements that are expected of them between first year and last year. We are there to support major exploration and help get them on the right path in different ways. So if your student is very exploratory, we might take that information that they give us and really kind of help lay out a path that helps them move forward in any one of those areas that they are exploring. We are going to be watching your students' registration and having conversations about their overall plan and the way that they kind of move through their academic experience. We are really always watching for and reminding students of balance. A lot of our students are extremely focused on achieving many, many things, but sometimes I see them burn themselves out. And we want to make sure that they have a little bit of balance. Kind of built into their thought process, not just about registration and scheduling, but about the entire picture. Maybe it's not necessary to have 4 majors and 2 minors, for example. Maybe there's ways to reach their goals with less majors and minors and more focused effort. Course and curriculum recommendations. We are not here to hand your student a list of classes that they will that they should take and only take. We think many of our classes have lots to offer. What I do in an advising appointment is listen to your student, hear what kinds of things are interest them, and then try to connect them to coursework that might attract them. And we will work on that together. And this is really important during the first year student process because we have to teach them how to think about these things. By my time my seniors come around, they're like, oh, I found this class and I've already learned about this class. They're telling me about classes. But in the beginning, it's really important that they understand how to look for these things and gather information about courses and curriculum recommendations. And then we are here to offer referrals, whether that be to a major department to explore a certain major, to a career advisor to explore certain career opportunities, or to our counseling office to support mental health issues that might have come up, or case management. So we're here to kind of hear where your student is at and help them through it. I recognize this is about registration, but at the end of the day, the stress that people bring to the table around registration is usually related to a lot more than just class selection. So one of the things I like to make really transparent, and this is actually online, you can go to the registrar's website and find your students, not find your students, but understand where registration is happening. So right now, registration times are fully based on earned credit hours. So majority of your students have earned no credits. Some students might be in 19 credits right now, some have been in 16, but they don't have any grades and therefore they haven't earned any credits. If your student brought in dual enrollment credit or transfer credit, those are considered college credits and would factor into this calculus. If your student earned AP or IB, that would not factor in to this number. That is earned credit through AP, but not earned college course credit. So this is set by the registrar, so don't hold me, don't shoot the messenger here. Most of your students will begin registering toward the end of this period because they haven't earned very many credits. But we do, as advisors, we are working to register all of our students beginning next week on Monday. That will and really starting to peak on Wednesday with our seniors, juniors, and then that usually falls into sophomores and freshmen. So most of the people on this call, most of your students will register anywhere on the 16th and 17th is what I would expect. Some of them might be on the 15th, but most will be on the 16th and 17th. Okay. Next slide. So what is your student going to do when they are supposed to register? First and foremost, we will be having them prepare a schedule ahead of time. And in our meetings, we'll talk about this, but they can be doing this on their own already. This is where a lot of parents get very involved. Some are already searching the schedule of classes. I know who you are. But first I want to point out a couple of things. What we're looking at is a small screenshot of the Gibson portal and the student tab. So you wouldn't necessarily see this unless your student showed it to you. But right across the top and the blue banner, that's where the ticket time that I just mentioned in the last slide is listed. So you can see this particular student shared their screen and their ticket time is on the 16th at 4 o'clock. So at that time, some of the processes that I'm going to talk about in the next slides will want to be ready and prepared. So really all they have to do is submit the registration. I'm not going to get too far into all the weeds, but I do want to kind of show you some of these pieces. On this slide, there are two tools that will be important to your student. First, the schedule of classes is on the left-hand side. You can also find it on class schedule at .tulane.edu. So that is always available. Anyone can look at it. You do not have to be a student. You just can't save any information if you're not a student. The audit is a tool that shows students progress toward graduation. Advisors use the audit in every meeting. It is not mystical, though. It is something we have access to for all of our students, but each student has access to their own audit. And this is a good starting point for students to see their requirements and their progress toward graduation. But I guess I would say that be careful not to get your student too focused on the audit and then forget that and get stressed out that they have a lot left. They're first-year students, or if they're first-year students, they should have a lot left. Also, the specific advisor's name is listed on the same screen. So if your student is wondering who their actual named advisor is, that information is here as well. Forwarding on. So the schedule of classes is where all of the registration activity will be happening. My colleague used lots of red circles here. So let me see if I can pop around and explain to you some of the things that get overlooked in this generation of clicking wildly on things without really reading them. So taking a minute here, first and foremost, there are a number of tabs across the top. The planner tab, the registration tab, and the current schedule tabs are each different function. The planner is where students can see the classes that they've started to add to their cart over here on the right-hand side. Things where they have started to add things from the schedule and put them in here. The planner will reflect that, and you'll see a screenshot in a minute. What's important about it is it's not their registration. They are not registered in those classes. They're just on the planner. They're on the list. So it's kind of like their scratch paper. The register add drop tab, that's where things actually happen. That's where they actually have to add and drop things and submit that registration in order to do so. So again, maybe you've seen your student do this all summer and this is not news to you, but this is where students get stuck sometimes when they forget that there's different tabs for different functions. The current schedule is the only tab that shows what students are actually registered in. So that's a really important tab to remember, that after registration, after they've submitted it, check the current schedule to make sure that it matches what they plan to take. In the upper left-hand corner, we have a course box. Then there's a title box. These are different boxes. So some students will start typing in, I heard I need to take epidemiology, so they'll type it in the course box. The course box is just looking for a course ID. The title box is where you would type something like a specific title for a class. The curriculum requirements on the bottom left show us all the different, give students long lists of certain requirements. So the very top of this list is aesthetic and creative arts. Everyone needs one of those classes or 3 credits, and they will click on that, press all courses, and they'll see 1 million of them. Now, what's really important, because your student is registering later in the registration process, the status menu in the middle is going to be their best friend for alleviating stress. The status drop-down menu says all. That's going to show you all the art classes when you click the bottom left. But if you move that drop-down menu to open, it will only show you the classes with available seats. So this is a really important distinction. And often I see the stress leave students' bodies when they realize they don't have to sort through 20 pages of something, that really they're just going to focus on these 2 or 3 pages of options that are available the day or 2 before they register. So this is obviously, that list is dynamic and will change over time, but I think it's really useful for students to use look at only open classes most of the time when they're working with the schedule. I think that's all I want to say about the specifics here, but that is, I will say this though, that's upper right hand shows the term. I mentioned summer registration is also happening at the same time that your student's spring registration opens. This is if they change the term, they can change and then search summer classes. So they would register for summer separately and on a different page than on the spring registration. Okay. Excuse me, Penny and I were just talking about seasonal coughs, and now I've developed one in the short time that I've prepared. So this is just a rundown of some of the things I just mentioned, so I'm not going to get into all of this. But again, a course is an actual course ID. The department code is Chem, 4 letters, and 1080 is the class. But the class itself might be general chemistry too. Math 1210, that's advisor speak for calculus 1. SICE 2010 is a class called social innovation. So it's important just to know that those pieces of information are out there. The curriculum requirements, like I mentioned before, are things that students can pull from the audit. They will see things that are missing and things that are done. Obviously, when they think about registration, they'll want to hone into the things that might be missing. They might notice that they need a lab science, for example, and they might want to look up lab science options in the curriculum box on this page. And this is where the little tidbit about the status change to open to see classes that have available seats, which again is very useful moving forward. All right. So once a student is in a course, it's really useful for them to like read the details. I know that seems obvious. Most of us have to read lots of things for the jobs we do. But students often forget these like little things. So this is a slide that just tells you a little bit about what a co-requisite is. A co-requisite is something you have to add. If you take this class, that's SICE 2010, you also have to add the co-requisite. And that means it's mandatory, which means you have to have both of them in your cart. So when they're ready to add it to their cart, they press add, and then they can press on the little blue link that says SICE 2890 in this example, and they open that class, and then they can add that to their schedule. So both things will need to be listed. Students will want to read through the attributes, knowing which core curriculum requirements, which core curriculum requirements are actually going to be fulfilled by this class. A lot of times they'll email me and be like, what does this fulfill? And then say, well, look at the schedule of classes, look at the attributes. If there's nothing there, it likely means doesn't fulfill anything. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but we want to be careful. It's fine to take things that don't fulfill certain attributes because everyone needs credits to graduate, but it is important to make a distinction as to what you're taking and why. And then there often are very helpful course notes. Students will call me in a panic. Why won't it let me register for this class? And it says, it might say something like only for seniors listed, and they didn't realize that it was only for seniors. So it's just important and helpful information. And the days of the week are also coded in different ways. I think most students and parents know this by now, but there is, if you toggle over the TR, it'll tell you Tuesday, Thursday. All right, Penny, thank you. All right. So your student is probably talking a lot about their planner. And again, this might be way more detailed than you ever expected. But the planner is what I was mentioning before, the scratch paper, where they literally will add things to the list. It's okay to have conflicts and to have things on the list that aren't really real. I think it's really important for first-year students especially, but for all students, to actually have a longer list of classes than they intend to take. So that as they get closer to registration and maybe certain classes fill up, they might be able to add to a wait list on that class. But I want them to be actually registered for minimum full-time, which is 12 credits. And I'd rather them be registered actively in 15 around that registration time. So to do that, if certain classes fill up and they join a wait list, it's totally normal and fine, but they don't want to stop. They don't want to have 5 classes, wait list for 2, and then only be enrolled in 9 credits, which is part-time. And that's going to kind of mess up it's going to slow down some of the processes like billing and things like that, that need that full-time status to kind of keep them level. So I think it's always more important for them to have a long list, and then before their registration time, maybe the day of or the night before, edit that list down and really see what's actually open, not open, and then kind of make it work with the options they have. Register, even if they don't want to register for all of it, register and then make changes later. So the planner, again, is a good space for them to kind of imagine different alternatives And I do think having multiple planners helps students understand that these perfect 5 classes that are not at 8 a.m. and they're perfectly spaced throughout the day and the week, that plan is great, but it might not be the end point. You might end up with all those classes, but where they are on the schedule, I find students get really stressed and wedded to that. And it's really much more healthy for them to have multiple options so that they can pivot and change in the moment if registration options have changed in real time, which they will. Totally normal. All right. I think we're good on this one. Excuse me. Okay, on the register add drop tab, we have the final step, which is submitting registration. Now, any student who sees a yellow error message like this student does will not be able to submit their registration. So they need to clean those up. It might be easy. It might be something like the class ran out of seats before they registered. So the student just wants to add themselves to the wait list. That would be fine. At the moment of registration, the drop-down menu to the right that says add would just need to be changed to waitlisted. And then they could submit, the yellow error message would go away, and then they can submit their registration. So it is important that they have that they check this before they register so they can see if they have any issues, and they can flag them to us if it's something that is an actual mistake of some sort, which that happens. This is a huge program with a huge number of classes. So sometimes there is something that's missing or not connecting. And it's very helpful when students send us screenshots so we can let our friends in the registrar know. Every registration status, they can either add a class, remove a class, or wait list. So that's what the little drop-down menu on the right of each course says. That's it. I just wanted to show you this one screen so you knew kind of what it looked like when they register. So what would stop registration would be holds. Right on the student tab in Gibson where it shows their registration tab, it will also show them hold. So if they should know they have a hold. There's a couple places it says it, not only on Gibson, but also on their schedule of classes when they're logged into it. And this example here, the little screenshot is showing this is actually what the top of the audit looks like. So it will show you if there's a hold going on there as well. There are certain holds that will stop students from registering. Most I don't want to say popular, but most common holds that I see are immunization holds for missed shots or vaccination requirements. They may have not have gotten a paperwork in or something. If this is something you know your student's working on, or you are working on right now with your student, I'd highly recommend just checking in with your student to see if they have one of these hold kind of banners or warnings, because that means something hasn't been finished yet. And so they will want to address that now when they have a few weeks to go. It's really stressful when students find out at 4 o'clock on their registration time that they have a hold because the button won't let them submit. So we really want to try to get ahead of that. So looking for holds ahead of time. If immunization, accounts receivable, oftentimes that accounts receivable will lift holds if someone just calls and says, this is our plan moving forward. But they do need to be contacted directly, and you need to give them time to be contacted and to work with your student or you, depending on the situation. Some student athletes will also have holds. They need their athletic advisor to actually lift those holds. And that's it for that one. So kind of overview here, big picture. Students should actively enroll, add at least 12 credits at the time of registration. It's okay to waitlist for things. You can only waitlist for 3 classes, but they want to be strategically, they really want to be registered in a full-time schedule for many, many reasons, but also it puts their name on a list in that class so that they do have active classes that will work for them. And that's why I want them to have a long list of options to choose from so that they can make those changes in real time. During registration, their students will be allowed to add up to 17 credits This allows generally for up to 5 academic classes, which is generally what everyone needs to stay on track and graduate into 8 semesters as planned. That max will increase on the Monday after registration finishes up. So that'll be the Monday of Thanksgiving week and break. And that'll go up to 19. So if your student is hoping to add something or kind of go above credits, they might have to strategically wait and hold the class that has the most seats in it, or will be easy to add later. So a lot of my music students will add their music lessons later because there's always seats in those types of opportunities. And then it's always a good idea to check in with someone about feedback on your schedule. That could be a peer advisor. It could be your professional advisor. It could be somebody within a major. It could be upperclassmen, which is helpful, but not your only advising support, but checking in with our office to really make sure it looks good. And if they're running out of time or running out of opportunities for meeting, they can always send a screenshot and say, this is my plan, this is my name, this is my ID, and this is what I'm hoping to study. What do you think? And those can be very useful emails with the right information included. So ways that, I don't know if I really said this in the introduction, but I have worked with Tulane in this office for 10 years. So I've seen a lot of different ways that parents have partnered with us as individual advisors to make sure that their student has the support they need. You know your student best. While some of my advisors might be working with 300 or 400 students, you know your student best. And so we always welcome information that you might have that can help us support them. But it's also really helpful for you to kind of, in a parallel world, outside of advising, to be having positive, strong conversations that help your student in this really important developmental period between 18 and 22, usually, to think about their options. Some of the best ways I find that advisors and parents can support students is just asking good questions and letting the student think it through. They are in the driver's seat. One of the things that you probably already do is help your student reflect on what classes they really will enjoy and what they will excel in. Once a student is actually registered, those conversations may also be, how's it looking this week? Or how are all your classes landing for you? Do you need to make changes in the first week to make sure that you have a successful semester? So helping support them through some of those decisions, but really reflecting on, oh, how are your classes? Which one's standing out to you? What do you think you like about that class? Those kinds of conversations, and just them articulating it will make them that much more comfortable articulating it to the other types of advisors they may come across on campus. Have conversations with your student about academic plans that may require additional time or expense. Is study abroad an opportunity for your student? Are summer classes available to your student? If that's a hard no for you and your family, then figuring out how we can fit all of the things in within each semester is going to be important. Other students who are always worried about being behind, they like to take summer classes. Those students generally are not going to fall behind because they are kind of gathering more credits each semester. I think it's great to continue to talk to them about what you're learning tonight and how advising is structured and how different advising opportunities might be best suited for the situation that they're working on. In this example for today, we're talking about registration. So my office in college advising, our website has some information and frequently asked questions that can be very useful, but also looking to schedule an appointment with an advisor. They always link on their website, on their signatures and their emails out to students. And I know they've emailed your student a number of times, so they can always find how to make an appointment there. If there's not appointments available at the moment they check, they can keep checking for cancellations, and usually new appointments will post the next morning. I think it's important for you all to know, and students, we recently switched to a new scheduling system, and that scheduling system right now allows appointments 14 days out. So we really, even though the scheduling system shows multiple months of opportunity that all look full, there's really only 2 weeks that will show, according to our kind of structure that we've laid out for those appointments. So each time that they can look at the new appointment opportunities would be, the best time would be in the morning. But we also have other advising things happening. And of course, that's kind of coming to a head in the next couple weeks. First of all, advisor of the day currently today is only offered from 1 to 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday. When we hit registration, we'll have 2 advisors all day, morning shift and an afternoon shift from 9 to 4:30, I believe it is. So they'll have virtual drop-ins that they can do just to kind of run their schedule by someone and check on something. Sometimes that means they would wait because it's first come, first serve, but oftentimes students are kind of doing their homework and just sitting in the waiting room until their opportunity comes up. So it's a pretty good model considering how much time I know they spend on their computers to kind of turn it on and wait. Sometimes it goes very quickly, and sometimes I will say the afternoons are probably the busiest times. So if your student is worried that they really want to just make sure they talk to someone, it might be best for them to set their alarm clock and check in the morning for the advisor of the day beginning Monday of next week. We also will have drop-in advising. Peer advising is happening every day in Mussafer Hall. I have a slide to support this, but directing them to some of these opportunities for the more urgent or quick questions, just to help your student alleviate that stress. These are all great ways for them to kind of connect with our office and remember that we are a resource and kind of not get stuck in their heads on their own. We don't want them spiraling about their schedules. They're not going to mess something up that's going to change their life trajectory. They're going to register, and then we're going to check in with them again, and we're going to check their schedules. If there's any issues or they're under enrolled, we'll be reaching out to them. So there's kind of a lot of safety nets put in place. But at the time, I know it all feels very real and very important and very urgent. And so it is important for them to know those resources. Kind of encouraging that flexible mindset and that patience will really help your student just kind of breeze through this period of time. Each time I see a first year student, I'm like, this is really important that you're putting all this together, and I don't want you to worry about it. If something changes, don't worry. We will continue to fix things. And they can continue to add and drop. Once that registration time opens, they'll be able to continue to make changes. So help them manage their expectations, and when they might take a class might not be their first year. They might have to wait, like some other students have, till junior year to take that class with the fancy professor. And that's absolutely normal and fine. So helping them manage their expectations and encourage them to get information that can help them understand the process a little bit more when they feel stuck. Okay. So we have a number of things happening for first year students and all of our students right now. Our first year team is working specifically around some of the things you see here. There's a little QR code that takes you to our Connect page, and students can connect in that website as well to some links to these events. But the registration roundup is every Tuesday right outside the tutoring center from 4 to 6 through registration. So that'll end after registration wraps up. We have some webinars. There's actually one happening concurrently right now, and another one about registration strategy that will look very similar to what you and I talked about tonight. That will happen next Wednesday, the 8th. We've got midnight advising. We shifted that a little bit earlier this year for our advisors' sake, but basically 7 till 10 we'll offer advising drop-in services in the new hub that is on campus. I'm sure many of you have seen it. And we're excited to kind of spend some evening hours when students are more out and about to kind of casually check in and go over their schedules and just kind of meet them where they're at. And then we'll have some drop-in advising schedules that I've already pointed to, but I also have on my next slide. The assigned advisor opportunities will include office hours. Each advisor will generally have at least 1 or 2 hours a week where they will be available for drop-in hours with them specifically. So you don't just have to go to the advisor of the day. They'll have one-on-one appointments that they can schedule through Calendly. They can email their questions. And they can always check in after registration. If a student's feeling pretty good about what they can do, they can always register and check in after. And like I said, we can add things, drop things, shift things around, or rethink a few things if we need to. All right, next slide. So during registration, so for me, registration begins on Monday, the 6th. There's only a few populations that'll begin registering on that day, mostly graduate students and some student athletes with special registration priorities. Most students won't begin to register until the 8th, but this whole period is called priority registration. It goes from the 6th through the 17th this year. So during the time, we'll have drop-in advising at the front desk, drop-in at Mussafer Hall. Most of that will be peer advising and all team advising available on a first come, first serve basis during those hours. Then there will be drop-in hours at the hub, garage, same place as midnight advising. That will be the second week of registration. If you remember the time tickets, most of my sophomores and first years are registering in that second week. So that is kind of a busier, a little higher stress time because those students are less familiar with the process. So we have lots of people signed up and ready to meet your students in the hub from 9 to 4:30 each day during that week. And then we also have the virtual advisor of the day, which I mentioned already, 9 to 4:30 daily, where a student can link through our website and just join a meeting and meet with an advisor on a first come, first serve basis. These are the upcoming calendar dates that you might want to take note of. I'm sure Penny's done a really great job of making sure that you know all these dates already, but the Thanksgiving holiday is coming through very soon. Right after registration, the classes will resume on the 27th, and then quickly afterwards, they'll have the last day of classes on December 8th. There'll be a small study period, there'll be a larger exam period, and then all grades are due for students on the 20th. So these are just some dates that we like to remind everybody of. I mentioned some other professionals on campus that your student may need to lean into if they're having particular types of stress, or if you just think that they need some help in some areas that might fall outside of academic advising specifically. So we do have the Tutoring and Learning Center. This has peer tutoring, there's a writing center, and there's also courses that have a supplemental instructor where the student will actually learn from a student who's taken successfully the class that they're in. Usually these are high demand classes like chemistry and calculus and biology and things like that. And those students who are supplemental instructors work closely with the professors to make sure that the content is on par. We've got success coaching. Also it lives in Mussafer Hall, that task management, work-life balance, executive functioning, case management, students who are going through extraordinary things, which many people are right now, I understand. This might be that your student needs victim support, but also just complex non-academic issues. Students navigating health concerns, students navigating family stressors at home that are starting to bleed over into their academics, and they just kind of need extra support. Case management is a really high demand office, but also a very good support system for those conversations, and they can help with reaching out to faculty members to kind of come up with some solutions if something's keeping a student out of class unexpectedly and so forth. Counseling, very important for us to kind of make sure those supports are in place for mental health. So the counseling center is available for for meetings. And this is obviously for the real high anxiety, stress, and traumatic events that might need more professional support. Professor office hours are great professionals on campus. They can, they should write out their questions. They should understand how they're getting graded. They need to understand the material. And this is a good time to go and really, rather than just ask about their grade, ask about the subject hour. Some professors put a lot of time into their office hours, some less so, but it's important for your student to identify which professors use that office hour effectively, so that they can also use those resources. We've got career for big picture decisions, and then all the peer supports that are listed. So lots of people around to support, sometimes so many that I know that can be overwhelming in and of itself. All right. I think we might be at the end. It might be time for questions. And
yes. So thank you so much, Heather. So I'll just invite parents to submit your questions, and then we'll get to as many of those as we can. So we have a couple ready to go here, Heather. So one person wants to know, well, this is something for everybody. So we did mention at the very beginning, we will have the recording of this webinar and a PDF of the slides available in the communications archive on the Family Programs website. So that URL is families, plural, families.tulane.edu. You just go to the communications tab and you'll find your way to the webinars and tutorials archive. So give us a few days, usually give us like 2 to 3 days to get all of that posted, and then you'll be able to find it there. And we always post the slides too, in case you've already participated in the whole webinar and you just want to go back and kind of spot check a couple of things, you know, to refresh your memory on something. So another question, Heather, is can advisors help students figure out if summer classes taken at another college or university would be accepted for credit by Tulane?
Yeah, that's a good question, and actually something with our new model that shifted a little. We actually have a dedicated transfer credit specialist. I don't think that's his actual title, but that's what I call him. And he was an advisor with us for years, and there's actually a link on our website that your student can go to and make an appointment with Kevin Krivchuk, our transfer credit specialist, to kind of look at summer classes. There are some summer classes at certain institutions that have already been approved recently. And so if they're already in the system, the student may have to just do very little and just go take the class and send their transcript. If this class has not been reviewed in the recent 3 years, I believe it is, then those students might need to go through a few extra steps to get their course reviewed by the department. So yeah, the answer is yes and no. We can get them started in the process. Our office does that. Individual advisors can talk about the curriculum that we have here at Tulane and what might be good options for them. If it really has to do with their major and things that they're working on. I saw somebody mention something about business school. If there's something specific, they might have to work with that school to really figure out which classes would be best to take in the summer. The general rule of thumb that all of us can do, but so can you, is whether or not the university offering the class is a 4-year accredited university. So we don't take transfer credit from community colleges or junior colleges. So we do have to be careful of that.
And Heather, just to clarify, when you mentioned the school could help them figure out, that you meant the academic school here at Tulane, correct?
Yes.
Like whether it's liberal arts or science and engineering.
It would be the specific department, but that might, yes, I was thinking of the business school because it's kind of a lot of majors under one,
Right.
but yes, you're right. Is it kind of going to the major department to figure out what they need for their major? That might be a helpful conversation. My office would help them figure out what they might need for their core curriculum or prerequisites that they might need, and
Right.
how to identify those classes.
Okay. So another question is, can you speak to course registration considerations and strategies to help prepare for the option to go abroad in the junior year? It may seem early for this, but I've heard that it can be very difficult in the business school if you aren't already aligned with a business major and taking the requirements as a freshman.
Yeah, let's see, what's the best way to address this? So we do talk a lot about study abroad or leading up to study abroad. And we do talk about some of the things that we think would be useful to a student. The way I think about study abroad, there's two areas of study abroad. So this might get a little confusing. So I'm not going to go into it too far. But the business school has their own study abroad office and their own study abroad opportunities. And Newcomb-Tulane College, which is the undergraduate arm of the university, also has a study abroad office with other types of opportunities. The reason the business school has their own opportunities is because some of those schools are chosen as accredited business schools. So they know that the classes that they are taking and bringing in for a business major meet the accreditation standards that our business majors have to have, because the business majors are earning professional degrees, the Bachelor of Science in Management. So that said, the considerations really are laying out all the little boxes up until junior year. So if your student's a first year student, you're going to have like 3 little boxes between now and junior year. And if your student is a sophomore, some of my sophomores right now, I'm already talking about what to take in the spring to help make sure that they have what they need before they go abroad. I think the most important thing for a business student would be to plan that out with their advisor in the business school, because that really starts getting into the requirements that they have for the major. The main rule of thumb for that school is that they finish as many of their of the general intro courses to all the areas as possible before they go. Other students may not have to worry about it. With study abroad, I really the planning really has to do with, can I finish most of my major without the study abroad semester? And if the answer is yes, then I usually tell students, well, that's a good thing. That means mostly what you need to bring back from study abroad is credits. And if that's the case, then you have a lot of flexibility as to where you go and what you take. If you don't have that flexibility and you have to have certain classes to go abroad, then we need to kind of bring in a few other folks to have the conversation about the requirements. But long story short, there's a million strategies, and maybe I know too much. So send them to us and we can help them lay it out as far as we can go. And then we'll get them to the departments if they need to have a more specific conversation.
And I will just mention that there will be a study abroad fair for the students on campus. And I believe it's either November 15th or November 17th. That'll be in the next family newsletter. It'll be mentioned. And while the Newcomb-Tulane College Study Abroad office is coordinating the whole fair, and they'll have representatives from different programs there, there will also be a table staffed by the folks from the Freeman School of Business Study Abroad and Exchange program at that as well. Excuse me. So there are many opportunities for your students to meet with the staff, you know, in one-on-one appointments and stuff, but sometimes, especially if they're in their first semester, going to that fair and getting a general idea and an overview of the different things that are available and being able to talk at tables staffed by different representatives one-on-one can be really helpful. So, let's see. Another question is, can you clarify or repeat the dates that most first years will register?
Can clarify the dates that most first years will submit their registration. They each have a ticket time that is either going to be the 16th or 17th. So our system can't handle everybody registering at once. And I should have mentioned this. So there's usually like an 8 a.m. time slot, a 10 a.m. time slot, like a noon. I can't remember all the times that they lay out for out a day, but usually the first one of a day is at 8 a.m. and the last one is 4 p.m. for that day. No new time slots will open until the next day at 8 a.m. So your student will have a banner across the top of their Gibson portal and their scheduled classes that tells them the date and time. But because a lot of students have 0 credits right now, we had an incoming class of 1,800 students. So a lot of those students all have the same number of credits. Who registers first or second or at 8 a.m. versus 4 p.m. is really, I believe it's a lottery system that's kind of randomly selected by the computer. So our registrar office, like I said, kind of handles all of that, but they generally are going to register at the time that is appropriate. It's all computer generated. But that if anybody's in the same boat of credit hours, which like I said, my first year students are, that will be chosen randomly.
Was that on one of these earlier slides?
Yes, it is even earlier. I think I had this one, the registration time tickets. So you can see that the 16th and 17th are all students who've earned 0 credits. I have no way of knowing except by students sharing with me or looking it up through the registrar system, what time students will register, but the 16th or 17th is a sure thing. Possibly the 15th at the end of the day is also a possibility. If your student is an athlete, because they have such intense scheduling and practice situations, they do register on the 6th.
Okay, so another question is if you could just repeat the name of Kevin's full name, the transfer
Kevin Krivchuk. I don't know where to put it. You want me to type it somewhere?
I think that's fine. We'll put that in the follow-up email that we'll send.
Yeah, it's Chuk.
The next question is there any priority registration for first-year students who are top scholars or honors? And I think that's an understanding of kind of a holdover from maybe the entering class. So if you could clarify anything about that.
Okay, hold on. The question is about
Are there certain scholars or honors students who get priority registration for
thank you.
first year?
Okay. Yeah, so the answer is no. So the first round in the first semester, they do come and register prior to other students, but now they're going to be kind of in the general population for this registration season. As students earn credits, this quickly changes and the time tickets will change slightly accordingly. I do want to assure everybody, though, that we do monitor course enrollment and we do flag classes that are filling up more quickly. We're all very aware of the classes that have high demand. And if we saw that was starting to fill up before most of my freshmen got to register, like a chemistry class that's sequential, and if you took Chem 1, you need Chem 2, we usually we as advisors, but we as a college also start letting departments know, like, hey, what's going on? We need to make sure we have enough seats for this particular thing. Is there anything you all can do? And then, sometimes the departments will start figuring out issues. So I guess I want to assure you that whether or not your student is registering first or last, they're going to get classes. There's a lot of classes that are available and that are mostly focused on my first year students and the sequencing that they're doing. So there's going to be, the university knows how many people need English 1010, for example, and because it's a requirement that everyone needs to take. And so they'll offer that many seats. And if they don't, or if they start running out, that's what is really powerful about a wait list, because a wait list is a way of saying, look, department, this class has a lot of demand. Sometimes they're going to be able to do something about it, like English 1010, they absolutely will. And other times they will not. But that's what that wait list is, a way of showing that demand and saying, okay, you all should address this. But it really is a department decision how many seats are offered. But I'm pretty confident we can get students in to the classes they need to stay on track. I've never seen somebody not graduate because they simply couldn't get a class at the moment of registration.
So here's a question. I know my student is leaving on the 17th for a flight home for the Thanksgiving break. What if she's not able to register because of that reason at that time slot? So it's that the time slot's when it opens. It's not necessarily they only have 1 hour.
No, it will remain open afterwards. So they could register afterwards. If they're really stressed about it and they happen to be in flight during that time, there's no special accommodations that our office can provide or the university will provide, because that would open a wild door of questions. And but what I would say is, if a student is actually unable to register at their ticket time and the student has somebody who can support them in registering, sometimes I have had kind of a one-time only thing where the parent will put it in for them. But I would not recommend that. I do think, like Penny says, the registration can be open and remain open, and the student could just do it when they land. The same thing will come up when students are in class at the time of their registration time. I think in that case, I mean, professors kind of know, especially that people might be registering, but probably as a courtesy to the student letting the professor know that that might be happening would be an important communication to them. Because if they get a lot of that communication, then they can, maybe not put a test on that day or something vital.
Another question is, my student took some dual enrollment classes in high school. How could they see their current Tulane transcript to make sure those credit hours have been added? It's really their degree audit, wouldn't it be? Or
so there's two things. So the degree audit is an important tool, but it is not the same as a transcript. Okay. Both are available on that student tab in Gibson. The unofficial transcript can be run at any time. It's on the left-hand side of the student tab. It's one of the blue links. And I believe it just says unofficial transcript. The audit is also a place where this credit would show. But it's kind of hidden because you'd have to kind of scroll down and see where the credits are showing up. Or in the upper right-hand side of the audit, there's 3 little dots, and you can look at a student's semester by semester view, and that will show the exact classes that they earned credit for. So this is something we teach our first year students when we meet with them. And that's a great question to encourage your student to ask their advisor so that they know where to find this stuff. But the unofficial transcript is on the student tab in Gibson.
So we have a question about taking a certain math 1230 stats for scientists. And if there's any value to taking that outside of Tulane, like as a transfer kind of class, or a question about whether they can take it in the spring online, or is it recommended for the summer?
So I'm not really going to comment much, except to say, in my years of experience, this has only most recently become a real hot topic. And I'm not sure exactly why. There seems to be a concern about taking this class on campus, and it might be about balance, or it might be about taking it in your first spring when there's a lot of other things going on, like Mardi Gras and Greek life and things like that. So it might be, I don't necessarily think taking it elsewhere is recommended for all students. I definitely think that that's some sort of rumor mill that's kind of gone around for students. But I recognize that math is a touchy subject for a lot of students who don't feel very confident in it. And so I do recommend summer coursework if it's something that they'll simply do better in when they don't have so many distractions and they can really focus in on it. But And why is yeah, stats for scientists versus a business school stats, that would be that's a great question for the math department. I would love to see a business stats, but right now the business school feels like the stats for scientists is the more rigorous math, and the math department is currently not offering a business stats class. So between those two factors, that's what the business school has put on their kind of curriculum requirement. But and just a quick comment on the part about taking a class during the spring at another university. I don't know that I would recommend that. That sounds like a lot. And I'm not sure if they can't, I mean, nobody's going to stop them from doing that, but I don't know if it's really the best for that student. And I'd want to have an individualized conversation. Like, those are great reasons for one-on-one meetings with an advisor to really weigh that conversation. You're not going to get that from our transfer credit specialist, but like really weighing for the student and with the student, what is the best option for you? And why is that the best option? Because your friends told you that it was too hard here. I see lots of people do well in stats for scientists here on campus, and not every student is unable to do the math class. So it really, to me, is more about balance within a semester.
Well, we've gone over time, so I think we'll
you.
close things out there. And thank you so much, Heather, for all your time and attention and your insight and advice. And we hope this has been helpful for all of you family members who've tuned in. And again, we will put the slides for this and the link to the recording up on the Family Programs website in a couple of days. And also you would find there the PDFs of the presentations on the Freeman Business School Study Abroad program and the Newcomb-Tulane College Study Abroad programs that were presented at Family Weekend. So you could review those slides if you would like. They're pretty densely packed slides with a lot of good information that you can just read. And so that could be helpful for those of you who are wanting some more background about those opportunities for your students. But definitely encourage your students to go to the Study Abroad Fair as well this later this month, and remind them to read their emails, because they are definitely getting communications from their advisors and reminders about all of these procedures, and so they just need to keep up with those things and be as prepared as possible for this process coming up. So thank you again so much, and we hope you have a good evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Penny.